What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and today I bring you some new information on an old leak, which seemingly reveals the upcoming new hero abilities for the Junker Queen. And thanks to the Overwatch 2 beta and some of the new details it's given us, I am now almost certain that this leaked Junker Queen kit is real. Now, before I delve into this new information, I would like to do a very quick recap of the leak itself, since it's important to understand the leak if you want to understand why this new information is pertinent. So if you've already seen my other video talking about this leak, you can go ahead and just skip to the next chapter in the video where I'll get on to the new information. But for those of you who aren't familiar with this leak or want a bit of a refresher, let me provide you with a very quick recap. So on April 5th, 2022, French Overwatch streamer Feifei claimed to have acquired new information and even ability icons for the Junker Queen. He then streamed a presentation showing off this new information and talking a little bit about his own speculation building off of it, but here is the core and supposedly official information as documented and put together by Stuck in Orbit on the Overwatch 2 subreddit. Considering that Feifei is a French Overwatch influencer, there is of course some translation going on here, so here's the English version of what all these abilities seem to be, as well as their brief descriptions. The primary fire is Scattergun, which is basically just a generic short-range shotgun shot. The next ability, which is most likely going to be her passive/alternate fire, is Serrated Blade. The passive aspect, melee strikes injure the enemy and do damage over time. Most likely this is in reference to just the hero's quick melee, which seems that for the Queen at least is going to have a unique sort of damage over time aspect built into it, which is most likely going to manifest in the form of bleed damage, as we'll see referenced a bit later in this leak. The second aspect of Serrated Blade though, the active part of it, is that the Queen can throw out the blade and then return the blade back to her by reactivating the ability, and when she does so, it can pull in enemies that were hit by the blade. So I think the best way to think about this is it's kind of like a delayed Roadhog hook, where you throw it out, if it hits an enemy, you can then summon it back to bring that target into you, but it doesn't have to happen instantly in the same way as with Roadhog. Instead, it sounds like you have to use the ability again, which again is probably alternate fire, so right mouse button if you're playing on PC, in order to pull back whatever enemy you hit. Moving on to her first normal activated ability, Rallying Cry, increases Junker Queen's HP by 200 and nearby allies' HP by 100 and increases movement speed by 30%. Next ability, Carnage, injures all enemies in front of you and does damage over time. So this seems to be just a frontal AoE attack, which, like her unique quick melee, applies that damage over time bleed effect. Her passive ability outside of the Serrated Blade is Adrenaline Rush, which causes the Queen to heal all damage caused by bleeding. Presumably, this means that whenever she causes bleed damage to an enemy with that damage over time, she then gains that damage dealt back as health to herself. Although, according to Feifei with the specific ability, it seems like there was a bit of a misunderstanding or miscommunication in terms of the actual effect of this ability, so just keep in mind that there's a bit of confusion surrounding this one in general. And lastly, the Queen's ultimate ability, Rampage, charge ahead and apply bleed and anti-heal on enemies hit. So considering the icon we see here for this ability, it's likely going to be some sort of whirlwind attack the Queen ends up doing, likely while wielding her large iconic axe, and then causes these two status effects, being bleed and anti-heal, onto anyone she hits. Now, Feifei also emphasized at this time that he isn't 100% confident in these leaks being real and that they certainly should be taken with a grain of salt, and also after many discussions started being had regarding the leaked information he provided, he emphasized that these leaked icons and information had actually been sent to him by one of his viewers. Feifei did also upload a YouTube video of the segment from his stream talking about all these abilities, which I'll have linked down in the description, but just keep in mind it is in French, so if you don't speak French, it'll be a bit hard to understand what exactly he's talking about. In these images we see here with the icon in the description, the icons themselves are supposedly from some sort of internal build of Overwatch 2 that Feifei's source was able to take screenshots of and then send to him. The descriptions beneath each of these these icons were things that Feifei himself wrote in as a description based off of information he was also provided by that same source. None of the other visuals we see here, such as the Junkertown background or the fan-made Junker Queen render, which is something that's been floating around the community for years at this point, are in any way trying to be conveyed as official parts of this leak. These were elements Feifei himself added to his stream in the visuals he was showing off just to help contextualize what he was talking about, so the only actually leaked details we have here are the ability icons and the information provided in their descriptions. Now, getting onto the new information we have, just recently within the past few days, a handful of members from the Overwatch 2 subreddit began re-examining this original leak and comparing some of the information we have from it to new information we have now that we have access to the Overwatch 2 beta. And needless to say, there were some rather interesting discoveries made. So first up, we have a post from Futured Pandana, who pointed out the striking visual similarity between the leaked icons for the Junker Queen and how icons show up in the Overwatch 2 beta for various hero abilities. This is most evident from the ultimate icon, which as we can see here, both the leaked Junker Queen icon as well as the official UI being currently used in the Overwatch 2 beta, both have a very similar format. The icon itself is in the middle of a thin, solid-lined cyan ring with a faded blue aura moving outwards from there. By contrast, this is what the icon looks like in Overwatch 1, and we can see that the leaked Junker Queen image much better represents what we're currently seeing in the Overwatch 2 beta than how ults have been portrayed originally in Overwatch 1. And while, yes, a decent graphic designer would be able to pretty accurately replicate this Overwatch 2 beta UI format, the key detail to keep in mind is that this original Junker Queen abilities leak came out close to a month before the Overwatch 2 beta actually started. Considering this, the only people who would have known at this point that this is what the new Overwatch 2 UI was gonna look like would have been people who presumably had access to the Overwatch 2 alpha. Right off the bat, this drastically reduces the number of people who potentially could have produced this leak if it is in fact fake, as it would have had to either be someone within the Overwatch dev team or someone with close connections to the dev team, or potentially even a pro streamer or content creator who had alpha access, in order for them to know that this is what the icons would look like in Overwatch 2. But if even this isn't making you put a second thought into its authenticity, there was a second post made on the Overwatch 2 subreddit, this time once again by Stuck in Orbit, who made the original post talking about Feifei's leak of the abilities, where they showed that the screenshots taken of these ability icons were almost certainly taken within the practice range, and that they're specifically on top of a previously unseen model of the Junker Queen. Specifically, if you line up the leaked ultimate ability icon followed by the rallying cry and carnage abilities in the exact same format as we see them being sequenced in the Overwatch 2 beta, and adjust the image's saturation and brightness level to boost the background image, you can clearly see what appear to be three separate parts of a character's face. A face which seems to have blue hair as seen visible at the top of the ultimate icon, a menacing, almost cat-like eye in the middle, with part of a smirking mouth and even a bit of a scar evident down in the bottom. Even with only seeing this slim portion of the character's face, it does look very reminiscent of the official images we have of the Junker Queen. However, despite this, there doesn't seem to be any perfect matches between the face that seems to be showing up behind these icons and anything official or fan-made that we've seen thus far. Even considering the fan-made 3D render of the Junker Queen, which I mentioned earlier, this leaked face does not match up with the model at all. Both of them are clearly representing the same Junker Queen character, but the one behind the leaked ability icons has a much different looking eye, and also the scar at the edge of her mouth, which is entirely absent from the established fan-made one. And furthermore, the fact that these icons seem to be part of an overlay which has an at least partially transparent background, which itself is over the model of the Junker Queen, matches up perfectly with what we see in the Overwatch 2 beta when you bring up the hero's ability overlay while looking at that specific hero during hero selection. Also, a bit of evidence pointing towards these icons having been captured in the practice range. If we look at her scattergun primary weapon and consider its physical location relative to the weapons we see other heroes have in the Overwatch 2 beta here, we can even see that it seems to line up perfectly with the gray and orange background of this particular wall. The bottom part of the scattergun icon has a slightly more orangish hue, with this top portion being the same dark gray. Now, I realize that this may all sound like a bit of a stretch since, just UI elements lining up with characters in-game, is that really anything you can trust? And at the end of the day, of course, it isn't guaranteed that this leak is 100% genuine just based off of these details, but consider the alternative. In order for someone to artificially produce this leak, meaning that it's a fake leak they just made up for clout, then they would have had to know what the Overwatch 2 beta UI would end up looking like weeks before the general public ever got a glimpse of it, and also know exactly how the overlay for the ability icons would show up relative to a given hero when being viewed in the practice range on the hero select screen. And on top of that, they would have to have the artistic capabilities to produce convincingly realistic looking icons for each and every one of the abilities, and also have access to an image of the Junker Queen's face, which has seemingly never shown up or been featured anywhere else before. All in anticipation that we would someday see the Overwatch 2 beta and Blizzard wouldn't happen to change it to something else in order to convince people that this leak is real. Or the alternative to that scenario is that the leak is just simply real. Now, even beyond the suspicious UI elements we see in these leaked icons, another aspect which I think is important to address when it comes to the validity of this leak for the Junker Queen is the abilities themselves. I talked a bit about them in my original video covering this leak, but I didn't go super in-depth with it since I didn't really have the time to sort of analyze and consider how these abilities might work together. But I think another legitimately convincing aspect of this leak is the fact that the kit itself feels surprisingly realistic. Now, what I mean by this is typically when people fake or artificially make leaks for hero abilities or hero concepts or something like that, they tend to get a little exaggerated in terms of what the hero can do. They might give them one fantastical ability that can do this super powerful thing, or have this really complex mechanic or system that ties into their kit, and that's super exciting to read about when looking at a character specifically through their abilities, but more often than not, that doesn't end up being very realistic to how we actually see heroes being designed. Take Doomfist, for example. He's a very unique hero with a very interesting kit and set of abilities, but consider each of his abilities in and of themselves. Basically, they all boil down to jumping and punching, with the exception of his primary fire, which is just a weak shotgun. When you look at Doomfist purely through the lens of his abilities, he seems like an incredibly boring, incredibly lame hero. But when you consider the whole picture and how each and every one of those abilities work together as mechanics as part of a complete kit, that is when Doomfist becomes an interesting hero. Now, the reason I bring this up is because one of the big concerns I've seen brought up by people, and one of the main reasons I've seen a lot of people say this Junker Queen leak is most likely fake, is that the abilities we see being described in it aren't very interesting. And to be honest, yeah, I kind of agree. You have the new bleed mechanic, which deals damage over time, which is something we see a little bit of in Overwatch, but not a whole lot of. And other than that, it's a lot of just simple self buffs and like little sort of AoE damage aspects. Nothing in this kit in and of itself stands out as being super interesting. But when you take the entire kit and put it all together, it actually produces a remarkably coherent hero. According to this leak, the Junker Queen, who based on the abilities I'm assuming is going to be a tank hero, has a very brawly, disruption, close combat playstyle. Her primary weapon, the scattergun, is obviously going to be effective at close range, as well as all the melee aspects which have that bleed damage, and considering her passive, which seems to heal the queen herself for all the damage she deals through bleed damage, is an extra level of sustain, which you would expect to exist on a character who's a tank hero and who gets very close combat with how they fight. The only aspect of her kit which seems to have any range to it whatsoever is her alternate fire with the serrated blade, where she just throws out the blade and can use it to pull enemies in towards her, which again complements the rest of her kit by not only bringing in a target that then she can deal a ton of damage to, but also having this blade gives her at least one option to do something when at a distance, which is important for both player engagement while actually playing that hero, and also being able to build up a bit of ultimate charge between actually engaging in team fights. So while when separated, no aspect of this kit seems particularly interesting or outstanding, I can certainly see how bringing them together into an actual playable hero could result in that hero being fun, engaging, and having a unique and interesting playstyle, which is something that honestly I think at first glance can often be missed with a lot of heroes when you're purely reading the descriptions of their individual abilities. So, all that being said, is this leaked Junker Queen kit real? I'm inclined to say yes at this point. The reality when it comes to leaked content like this is that it's usually not proven to be true or false through some grand, exciting aspect. It's not like we got a screenshot of Mauga in-game or the new Kanazaka Fox Girl or something like that. No, I can tell you as someone who's been doing this for years at this point, the genuine leaks which provide actual information are always the more subtle ones. The ones with little bizarre UI aspects that stick out as being a little too accurate for what they should end up being, or a seemingly lackluster kit and abilities which at first glance seem sort of incoherent and boring, but when you consider what the character would look like as a whole hero as opposed to just a list of abilities, you'll start to notice that things begin to make a little more sense. And so that being said, yeah, I think this is probably a genuine leak for the Junker Queen. There are just too many little things that seem just a bit too believable. But of course, that is just my thoughts on it at this point. Certainly we'll have to wait and see to find out for sure one way or the other about this leak. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Special thanks to Stuck in Orbit, Dusky, and Futured Pandana for discovering much of the information I covered in this video and sharing it with me. And of course, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments down below. Are you convinced one way or the other about the authenticity of this leak? Do you think this is the kit we'll end up seeing for the Junker Queen in Overwatch 2? Or do you think somebody just got really lucky with how they managed to fake it? Either way, I'd love to hear from you, and as always, be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any future Overwatch 2 content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.